Here we have a 3D model of the brain, the brainstem, and the spinal cord, stripped away of the cranial nerves and the peripheral nervous system. On the brain, the important landmarks you will note are the frontal lobe, the precentral gyrus, the postcentral gyrus, the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe, and the temporal lobe. By stripping away the right cortical hemisphere, we can see the deeper structures of the brain emerge that form the limbic system. These structures are telencephalic in origin and sit atop the thalamus and the hypothalamus, which are diencephalic in origin. The midbrain is a mesencephalic structure, whereas the cerebellum and the pons are myencephalic. The premotor cortex found in this area is the center of motor planning for the conscious movement of skeletal muscle. Damage to it causes apraxia, which is the inability to plan complex movements, even if the muscle power hasn't been lost. The basal ganglia are part of the limbic system and are not true ganglia, but are a set of nuclei which allow the initiation and execution of movements. It consists of the striatum, made of the functionally and histologically similar putamen and caudate nucleus, and the functionally distinct globus pallidus externus and globus pallidus internus. You may also hear the putamen, globus pallidus externus, and globus pallidus internus referred to together as the lenticuliform nuclei. Damage to the basal ganglia causes a tremor at rest and either decreased intentional movement, as in Parkinson's disease, or increased unintentional movement, as in Huntington's disease. We will discuss the different ways that these diseases affect the basal ganglia soon. Once the basal ganglia have been activated by efferents from the premotor cortex, they project to the thalamus, which selects from predefined movements to arrange what kind of movement package should be delivered to the motor cortex to meet the request of the premotor cortex. The motor cortex is also known as the precentral gyrus, not to be confused with the premotor cortex itself. All skeletal muscles are mapped to the surface of the motor cortex in a somatotropic representation of the body. The specific arrangement of the mapping is called the motor homunculus. On the innermost and most medial aspect is the foot, followed by the rest of the lower limb. The torso, upper limb, a large area for the hand, and then the face, followed lastly by the tongue on the most lateral aspect as the precentral gyrus meets the lateral fissure, complete the homunculus. Having received the movement package from the thalamus, the motor cortex then sends down long axons from the giant pyramidal neurons in cortical level 5 to the contralateral motor nuclei of the cranial nerves and through the corticospinal tract, which decussates in the medulla, also becoming a contralateral signal. The corticospinal fibers synapse with alpha motor neurons in the spinal cord that then deliver the signals directly to skeletal muscles. Lesions in the motor cortex cause spastic weakness and tremor on intention, in contrast to tremor at rest for basal ganglia lesions. However, both of these are upper motor neuron lesions. Lesions of the corticospinal tract cause flaccid weakness characteristic of lower motor neuron lesions. As skeletal muscle movements occur, muscle stretch and load information is carried up through the spinocerebellar tract, back up the spinal cord as unconscious proprioception. This information is monitored by the cerebellum to ensure that actions are executed smoothly. Lesions to the cerebellum cause ipsilateral problems with ataxia and dysmetria because the cerebellum communicates with the contralateral motor cortex, which returns its axons to the ipsilateral side of the cerebellar lesion.